This morning is a brand new series. We're starting a brand new series today called Killing It, and Tom, you pronounce it wrong, because it's all in how you pronounce it, right? Because if you're killing it, that means like you're nailing it, you're knocking it out of the park, whatever. Like if you just say you're killing it, it gets a different kind of series, right? In fact, if you take the baseball out, then you're immediately thinking Negan, or you're thinking something like that. So we're not just killing it, which could imply destroying things. We're killing it. So it's got this melodic kind of tone, which means hitting a home run. We're learning to win at life on purpose. Sometimes we win, and it's not on purpose. And a lot of times we lose, and we don't realize why we're losing. We don't realize why things are getting screwed up in our lives. So this time of year is perfect, right? This is the beginning, the wee hours of 2018, and so it's time to make New Year's resolutions. If you haven't already, that's okay. So I think mentally, even though we don't always write them down, all of us, I think, when it comes to a new year, do a little bit of reflecting, right? Well, it's been a year. Maybe that's all you ever do. I don't know. But what I do is I actually I journal pretty much every day. I write in this prayer journal. I talk to God, and He teaches me stuff, and I go through that journal, every entry from the last year. I go through it, reflect on what I've learned, and I also want to think about what's the next year going to look like. Like, what should I be leaning into? I don't know if you do any of that. The typical New Year's resolution advice would be to come up with three or four things that are practical, measurable, right? You could check them off a list, things that you can actually do, and then march into the new year with those three or four New Year's resolutions. The problem is that before we figure out what we want to do, I think the fundamental question we need to be asking is, what kind of person do we want to be? Right? Because if we don't understand what kind of person we want to be, how do we know which things we're supposed to do? Like, I understand that if you need to lose weight, you need to lose weight. If you need to go back to the gym, or you need to eat healthier, I understand. I want to be a healthy person. But just, I want you to think of this question at the beginning of this new year now. At the end of next year, or this whole year, okay? So next year, December, it's like December 27th, 28th, and you've got a little downtime between work and stuff, and you have a little time to sit down and talk to God, or just talk to a friend. What would you like to be different about yourself this year? Like, what kind of person would you like to be by the end of this year? I don't know if you ever thought of that, right? Usually we go so practical that we don't ask the bigger question. What kind of person do I want to be? Someone's weeping already with just over there. I don't know what kind of person I want to be. It's okay, no pressure, because this series is actually designed to help you tease that out a little bit. So Tom mentioned that we're going to talk about different kinds of people, right? Two kinds of people. So what I'm going to do each week is I'm going to put up two kinds of people, and these generally are people at one end of the spectrum and the other. And then I'm going to help you decide, I hope, which side that you want to be on. For example, the first one we're going to tackle is foolish or wise. So I hope this is starting easy. I hope this is not hard for you. I hope that you're not going, I'd really like to just be stupid and foolish. But most of us are going, okay, I want to be the wise person. Now, what you're going to notice with all of these that we tackle, these next 5 weeks, is that they're in a way you could say, yes, this person's foolish, yes, this person's wise, but nobody is totally wise, and nobody is totally foolish. Do you understand what I'm saying? So sometimes it's more like a spectrum. Right? So you're on a spectrum from foolish to wise. In fact, there's things that I would say I'm fairly wise about, and there are things that I'm pretty dumb as a post about. So I think there's probably some area of your life that you're thinking as well. You're thinking, okay, this is an area I could shore up on. But at the end of the day, or at the end of the year, what kind of person do you want to be? What would it be like to lay that out in front of God as a big goal, and then we can back up and decide what we're going to do about that, all right? So here, maybe you find yourself at one end of the spectrum. I think I'm a little to the dumb side or the foolish side, and I hope that by the end of this year that I'm kind of a little further to the right in terms of the foolish to the wise equation, all right? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to unpack, just so we know what we're talking about, what's the essence of being foolish, And what's the essence of being wise? Because if we don't understand what foolish is and what wise is, how can we become a wiser person? Or how can we move from the foolish scale towards the wise scale, right? So here's what it's all about. A fool, and this is coming from the book of Proverbs. I should just back up here. A fool, I'm going to describe, and a wise person I'm going to describe. I think every verse that I'm using today, or almost every verse, comes directly from the book of Proverbs, written by a guy named Solomon, King Solomon, or he collected these proverbs, and they're in this one place, this just gold nugget mine that you can go to for wisdom, and also understanding what fools are. So every verse comes from this book of Proverbs in the Old Testament, okay? So here's a sampling, and this you can get an idea of what makes a fool just by looking at these. So I looked at dozens and dozens of verses for each and distilled them down to these 2 or 3 verses each that kind of get to the essence of what's there. Now, there are other kind of factors that factor into being a fool, but these are really the core of it, okay? So the core of it is that fools despise wisdom and instruction. So they do not like to be told what to do. Now, immediately, or how to do it, immediately, part of you should be going, that is so me, right? Like, come on, all of us, nobody likes to be instructed on how to do something unless you're hopelessly lost and all of your pride has already been shattered, and then you're like, okay, just tell me where to go and how to get there. Okay, so a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. Facebook, right? Come on. When you get involved in a discussion, you understand online or in some kind of chat room or whatever, people are not interested in understanding at all. All they're interested in doing is airing their own opinions. And we all get caught doing this. We all get caught. Someone's explaining something to us, and they actually know a little bit more than we do. We have no interest in understanding it. What we're thinking about what we're gonna say next. So again, we fall into this category. So the bottom line is that those who trust in themselves are fools. Fools trust in themselves. The reason they don't think they need any advice, the reason they don't think they need instruction, the reason they think, because they can figure it out on their own. They either know everything they need to know already, or they're going to figure it out on their own, okay? So that's the essence of being a fool. A wise person, on the other hand, listens to advice. I understand that Yoda didn't really listen, but he's the giver of advice, and so we've been the recipients of Yoda's advice throughout the years. A wise man listens to advice. This is a huge contrast to the fool. The fool doesn't want to hear it. The fool knows, I already got that. I got this. We're going to get to that in a minute, right? The heart of the discerning acquires knowledge. So not only are they open to advice, but they're adding to their knowledge as they go. Why? Because the ears of the wise seek it out. So you see the contrast. The fool thinks, I got this, I understand how to do life, I know everything I need to know, and what I don't know I'll figure out myself. Whereas the wise person says, you know what, the thing that probably is the most important in this situation, I probably don't know. Right? What I don't know is probably more powerful than what I do know, because if it was located, the most powerful thing was located in what I already know, my life would be more powerful than it is. So a wise person goes, probably I have something to learn, and what I have to learn is going to be a game changer. So they posture themselves as a learner, right? They actually go after new information, knowledge, and wisdom. The bottom line is there are 2 kind of reasons for this. The foolish people feel threatened by what they don't know. Wise people are motivated by it. Does that make sense? Wise people are motivated by what they don't know. So they find something that they clearly don't grasp, instead of pretending they know, or working around it so that they don't have to learn it, they go, oh, there's something to learn, that's cool. And they take it apart and try and figure it out and get advice and read blog posts and do whatever they need to do to get informed on that subject because they want to know. Whereas a fool is threatened by what they don't know. And as soon as they meet someone in the room that feels smarter than they are, they avoid that person, don't want to talk to that person, don't want to learn from that person. Again, I think we all do this to some degree. Now, just ask yourself, do you ask for advice? Do you ask people for advice? Do you approach people who seem to know more about something than you and say, would you teach me? Because the thing is, you don't seek what you think you already have. You don't. If you think you already have it, you're good, right? Again, the mantra of the fool is, I got this. Now, I'm sorry, if you say that, I just ruined it for you. So if you're married, your spouse is going to go, you fool. You don't really want to say that. We'll get into that later. But at the end of the day, the fool thinks, I have in myself what I need to succeed, and so I don't need the advice or input of other people, and I'll just learn as I go. Thank you very much. That's the essence of what a fool is all about. Now, there are consequences to which kind of person we want to be, which person we choose. Identity is the single, or your perception of your identity, is the single most powerful factor in how you see your own development. It's how you resist temptation. It lays the course for what you pursue and what you neglect. For example, if I was walking down the street today and somebody came out of the blue and offered me crack cocaine, I would say, no, thank you, but can I pray for you? Okay? Now, if they came to me with a gummy bear, whole different thing. Because I love gummy bears. But the reason that I would say no to crack cocaine is not because it's illegal. That has almost nothing to do with it for me. I wouldn't say no to crack cocaine because it's bad for you, even though it is. I would say no to crack cocaine because I'm not the sort of person that says yes to crack cocaine. It's not the sort of person I am, and I act according to who I believe I am. Do you understand? Right? So when an athlete is in training, this is a common theme in Scripture. If you see yourself as an athlete, it changes the way you approach exercise and diet and all kinds of things, your schedule and your life. Because athletes work out. Athletes take care of their bodies. See, the coach tells the athlete what to do, but what needs to get settled first of all is, does that person actually see themselves as an athlete? Are they willing to do the work of an athlete? If they're not, just getting them up early and putting them on an exercise regimen is not enough, right? We have to understand who we are. So the kind of person you choose has drastic consequences for how your life actually turns out. For example, let's talk about the fool. Folly brings punishment to fools. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? The more stupid they are, the more punished they get, and the more stupid they get. It's like this weird thing. And it's us, right? Sometimes we don't learn from our mistakes. If you find yourself doing the same thing over and over and over again, you got to wonder why. Or making the same mistake over and over again. The lips of fools bring them strife. This is the second theme in the book of Proverbs. Fools don't ask for advice. They think they got this on their own, and then they open their mouths. They think they know all kinds of things, and they spout it off, and hey, you're thinking of someone right now. You are. You're thinking, through this whole process, you're thinking, oh, my friend needs to hear this message, right? Like, this guy I met, this girl that I know, this coworker I have, this is him to a T. And they're probably saying the same thing about you, when they're reading this kind of stuff. And me. And their mouths invite a beating. The mouths of fools are their undoing, and their lips are a snare to their very lives. How serious is it to be a fool? To be the kind of person that doesn't seek out advice, that actually avoids advice. One proverb says that a fool avoids the wise person. Why? They don't want to know. They don't want to hear. Again, they're threatened by what they don't know. And then they're going to open their mouth and they're going to share the wealth of what they don't know and take more people with them. What's the consequence, or how serious is that? Well, when you and I use the word fool, fool, or no one really says that anymore, but when you think of a fool, you think of the court jester, you think of something ridiculous. In Scripture, this was one of the worst insults you could give someone. In Jesus' day, you did not call someone a fool. For example, Jesus is talking about how we use our tongue, and he's listing some common insults of the day, like anyone who says to his brother or sister, raka, which I don't know exactly the definition, I didn't look it up. It's like probably the equivalent of the F-bomb, or I don't know, something like that, right? So, by the way, you can't just hide behind, the F word's not in the Bible, so I can say it. No, he's saying, look, there are culturally determined words that you just do not say. So this was one of those we don't use anymore. But this is one of those. It's answerable to the court, okay? Look at this. Anyone who says you fool will be in danger of the fire of hell. Now, I'm not going to go into the fact that this isn't, I don't think Jesus is being literal here. He's not saying if the words slip out of your mouth, you lose your salvation and off to hell you go. That's not what he's saying. But look how serious it is. Okay, just so imagine there's a group of you together, a bunch of friends, and in Jesus' day, just a bunch of the disciples are around. Somebody turns to Peter and says, "You fool." Everyone's like, "You did not just say that. You called him, this is how serious this was." Right? So you do not want to be counted or called a fool. You do not want to be a fool because this is one of those things that can destroy your life. What you're saying is you're on a path to destruction and you're pretty much irredeemable. That's kind of the sense of the word fool. On the other hand, blessed are those who find wisdom, those who gain understanding, for she's more profitable than silver. She is a personification of wisdom. Than silver, and yields better returns than gold. She's a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Blessed are those who hold her, or those who hold her fast will be blessed. There we go. So I want to pull a few things just out of this. This is cool. Wisdom is like compared to a tree of life. In other words, once you have embraced wisdom and you latch on to wisdom as a thing you want to characterize your life, that tree is going to continue to bear fruit throughout your life. If you're committed to wisdom, not just knowing that thing about that subject, wisdom, pursuing wisdom, I must understand. If you make that a pillar of your life, that will continue to bear fruit throughout your life, and you'll be able to pluck that fruit at various times in your life, okay? So that's one thing. The second thing is this. A wise person is not wise because of what they know. I thought you just said that they're seeking out understanding. Yeah, it says right there. A wise person is wise not because of what they know. They're wise because of what they do with what they know. So, blessed are those who find wisdom, who gain understanding, for she's more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. In other words, you've got to do something with that understanding. So you understand that you can get the information and still be a fool. In fact, can you think of a bigger fool than someone who knows the right thing to do and decides not to do it? Knows how to do something profitable or knows how to get themselves out of the ditch, but doesn't put that knowledge into action. So this is why, in the Old Testament in particular, but it runs through Scripture, when you hear the word wisdom, it's not just knowledge, it's not just understanding. It's being able to translate it into skill, life skill, good at doing life, winning at life, which is why we're doing this series. A wise person is someone who turns insight into excellence. That's a wise person, according to Scriptures. Now, let's just pause here, and let's just say we're locating ourselves somewhere on the spectrum, right? By the way, the Bible also says that if you think you're particularly wise in your own eyes, that you should just knock a few points off because you're probably not as smart as you think you are. A wise person is actually humble enough to know that they have stuff to learn. So a wise person, here's the irony, a wise person sees that they're also a fool. right, in certain areas, and so that they need to learn, and they need to grow. How do we move from where we are to where we want to be? How do we grow wiser? I'm going to give you 3 or 4 principles just as we close, and this next bit of advice is probably, I've been looking forward to this all week. This piece of advice on its own has the power to change your life. It is also one of the most interesting things I've said in church. So this one better show up on social media feeds, okay? So get your camera ready. Here's the first piece of advice. If you want to become wiser than you are, shut your pie hole. That's it. Really, shut your pie hole. Look, if you play the fool, if you find yourself playing the part of a fool, clap your hand over your mouth. At least have the sense not to speak. Okay? Because if you speak, you might convince other people of your opinion, and it's not a good one. And you'll take people with you down the toilet, and that's not a good thing. But again, the first step in learning something you don't know is stop talking about what you think you already know. So clap your hand over your mouth. Even, this is a good one. Proverbs is so insightful. Look at this. Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent. Discerning if they hold their tongue. So next cocktail party you're at or party you're at, you find yourself mingling with some people that know stuff about something you don't know anything about. Just stand there like this and go, yeah. Don't say anything because you'll wreck it. And people are like, wow, he's very wise. What do you think, Brad? No, I just really need to reflect on this. Oh, he's very wise. See how it works already? You don't have to know anything. Right? You can fool people while you're growing from stupidity to wisdom. You can fool people, just don't talk. And then, so that's the first, you understand what I'm talking about, right? If you stop talking long enough, you can actually learn something. So this is the next one, and that's actually listen. Actually listen. Look at this. Listen to advice and accept discipline. At the end, you'll be counted among the wise. So he's assuming you're starting a little to the left of the line, you're not doing so hot, you're not a good listener, you think you know stuff, you think you're all that. But if you would just shut up long enough to listen and actually accept what people are trying to teach you, by the end you will have moved into a wiser quadrant of a life. Okay, so actually listen. The reason I said actually listen instead of just the word listen is because we're not very good at listening, and I'm not very good at listening either. Again, what I'm doing while you're talking often is I'm trying to think of what to say next, which isn't listening. That's, again, delighting in airing my own opinions, which according to Proverbs makes me a fool. So, here I go. I'm learning. Number 3, hang out with people whose lives are working. Again, I had to emphasize the word working, because we don't hang out with people whose lives are working. We tend to hang out with people just like us, who have the same problems we do, who have the same thinking we do, who are in the same rut we are in, and wonder why nobody ever gets out of the rut. Because to get out of the rut, you have to listen to someone and talk to someone and spend time to someone that has moved past where you are. You've probably heard the mantra that if you're a thousandaire and you want to become a millionaire, see how wise I am? If you want to, then don't quit hanging out with people who make thousands of dollars and start hanging out with millionaires. You start to realize how they think, how they do things, right? Now, the thing is, people whose lives are working has very little to do with money. I'm talking about find people. If you're a parent, if you see a family whose kids are turning out well, you go, those parents seem to have something going on. Humble yourself, shut your pie hole, and listen. Ask them for advice. It's not weakness, it's strength. Right? So if you find someone who's got a deeper relationship with God or understands prayer more than you or all kinds of things, just humble yourself enough, position yourself as a learner, actually listen, spend time with them, because if we walk with the wise, we become wise. And the opposite is also true. A companion of fools suffers harm, not just because they do something stupid, just like when you tell your son who's going to 7-Eleven for the first time with the friends, if they try and steal something, you just run out of there. That's the same principle. Don't hang out with stupid people or you're going to get caught in their stupidity. Okay? But on the other hand, hang out with wise people, watch what happens. By paying attention to the wise, you get knowledge. Humble yourself, take the posture of a learner, watch how people do things, not just what they do, how they do it, and watch what happens to your own thinking. You know, one of the principles in the New Testament is actually that if you want to grow, if you want to learn, find someone that knows God better than you and imitate them. I know it sounds counterproductive, like you should have your own relationship with God. Yeah. Try it. It actually says in Hebrews, consider your leaders and imitate their way of life and their faith and imitate it. It actually says that. If you find someone whose faith is working, you need to spend time with that person and imitate. You know what? Some of the things I've learned the most about prayer, for example, is I hear someone praying and he clearly or she clearly understands something about God. I'm going to use those words. I'm going to try praying like they pray. Just see what happens. It's amazing what will open up. You're like, oh my goodness. Again, because the fool thinks, no, I got to invent it myself. It's got to come from me. No, you're not all that. Learn from people. Try stuff, right? Hang out with people whose lives are working. In closing, none of what I've said so far actually requires God to work. I mean, it came from the Bible, so there's that. So if you're not a Bible person, if you don't think the Bible is inspired, the Word of God and all that, you should at least at this point be going, no, that's some pretty insightful stuff. I'll take that to heart. Shut up, listen long, like common sense stuff, right? But the other theme that runs through the book of Proverbs and then throughout the New Testament is this. The fear of the Lord is actually the beginning of wisdom. That one is like the bedrock on top of which these other things, but you can do those three things. Shut your pie hole, listen, walk with the wise. That's just smart. Okay? Tony Robbins will tell you the same thing. All these motivational coaches will tell you the same thing. What they won't tell you is that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all that. That if you really want to understand how life works. Now, what does it mean to fear the Lord? I'm not going to make this a whole sermon today. The best definition I've ever heard came from a preacher named, can't remember his name now. I can't even give him credit. That guy, the guy in my mind, you see him? Tony Evans, thank you, I appreciate that. Tony Evans said it this way: the fear of the Lord is simply this, taking God seriously. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The beginning of wisdom is taking God seriously. And what I mean by that is more seriously than Tony Robbins, more seriously than Brad Hubert, more seriously than anything. More seriously than your job or your coworkers or your peer pressure of friends, more seriously than what your political leaning is, what your social leaning is. You take God more seriously than all of that, and you watch what happens to the stuff that you know and how you start applying it to your life. So that's the shallow end of the pool. If you're not ready to commit to Jesus yet, that's fine. Just my call is take him seriously. Take him seriously. Because this is what the New Testament does with this concept. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It says Christ is the one in whom are hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. In other words, Jesus is the culmination of God's wisdom. He's like the wisdom of God in the flesh. Now again, if you don't believe that, it's okay. I hang out here long enough, and I hope you will. But here's the thing about Jesus. Thousands of years later, Whether or not you believe in God or don't believe in God, people the world over are quoting him and living as though what he said is some of the wisest things they've ever heard. And most of the things that work in our society, or at least have worked in our society, for generations are based on things Jesus said, whether we realize it or not. So again, whether you believe that Jesus is God or not, I'm encouraging you to follow him. Just how about we start it like this? You find somebody on social media that seems to know a lot of stuff and you click follow, not because you just want to give everything to them and put your entire life on the doorstep of what they teach, but you're thinking, I have something to learn from this person. He's interesting enough, or she's interesting enough to get regular input from. Why don't we start there with Jesus? Why don't we just take him seriously enough to say, I want to hear what Jesus has to say, and I want to try it out. Now, for the rest of us who understand who Jesus is, and we want to actually follow him because we understand that not only is he smart, he's the culmination of God's wisdom in the flesh, and he's worth giving our lives to because he's God. For those of us who are there, what would it look like to take him more seriously? Again, I come back to that question. When you're faced with a decision, do you ask for advice? A big decision, do you ask for advice? When you have a question about faith, do you just and only work it out for yourself? Or do you ask other people what they think? When you're in trouble, do you get people to pray for you? When you're struggling with a decision, do you open God's word, the scriptures, and take him seriously? And let it inform how you think and how you choose? Do you pick and choose which pieces of the Bible you're going to follow based on your own understanding? In other words, do you elevate yourself above the scriptures and the one who wrote it by choosing which parts you're going to follow and which you're not, because they're clearly not as inspired as others? But apparently you are. Or are we willing to humble ourselves? This coming year, 2018, what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be the fool? Do you want to just think you got what it takes in and of yourself? You don't need advice, you don't need other people, you don't need instruction? Or are you willing to humble yourself and put your life at the feet of Jesus and say, you know what, I'm in. And again, I know I've done this before, but I'm in. I need to learn from you. You're probably thinking of an area of your life, maybe you're not, but I hope you are, that you're thinking, I need to know things I don't know. There are things I can't see. There are things about my situation, my current life, I don't grasp. How about stop playing the fool, shut your pie hole, find someone who's figured it out or is figuring it out and say, could you show me what you know? Let's pray.